In a tight-knit suburban neighborhood, a single mother and her son face relentless challenges from a world quick to judge and slow to understand. A young boy's bravery against relentless cruelty shocks everyone, but what he does next with his bully leaves an entire school inspired. This is a story of courage, kindness, and an unexpected twist that will stay with you forever. Before we get into this unforgettable story, make sure you're subscribed to Epic Story Moments. Don't forget to hit that bell so you never miss another amazing tale. If you enjoy the story, like, share, and leave a comment. It helps us bring more heartwarming stories your way. And we'd love to know, where are you watching from? Let's stay connected. The morning sun cast a golden glow over the small suburban home where Lisa Reynolds and her son Marcus lived. Their neighborhood was a patchwork of cultures and stories, but like any community, it had its unspoken hierarchies and divides. Lisa, a hard-working single mother in her early 30s, began her day as she always did, up early, preparing breakfast for Marcus before heading to her nursing job at the local clinic. Her energy was tireless, but her eyes carried a softness that spoke of a mother's boundless love and occasional worry. Marcus, just 12 years old, was perched at the kitchen table, absent-mindedly stirring his cereal. With his thick-rimmed glasses and a preference for quiet, Marcus wasn't the kind of boy to dominate a room. He was introspective and intelligent, with a knack for art that transformed the ordinary into the extraordinary. Lisa often said his drawings could make the world see things the way he did, though Marcus himself wasn't so sure. Their home, though modest, had a warmth that couldn't be measured in square footage or material possessions. Framed drawings and family photos adorned the walls, and the smell of coffee and toast filled the air every morning. The living room doubled as a space for Marcus's art supplies, with sketch pads and pencils scattered across the coffee table. The neighborhood itself bustled with life. Children played in the streets, and neighbors greeted each other from their porches. But beneath the surface, there were cracks. Not everyone in the community embraced its diversity. Marcus often felt these cracks firsthand, especially at school. Middle school was a battleground of social dynamics, with cliques and unspoken rules governing who belonged where. Marcus, who kept to himself, didn't fit neatly into any group. He became an easy target for Dylan Harper, the loud and assertive boy who ruled the 7th grade social hierarchy. Dylan's taunts weren't just about Marcus's reserved nature. They often carried undertones that hinted at something deeper, a quiet prejudice that wasn't always voiced but was undeniably felt. In class, Marcus encountered a more subtle form of exclusion. His science teacher, Mr. Bradley, was known for his sharp tongue and harsh demeanor, but Marcus noticed how his comments about needing to work harder seemed directed more often at him than at other students. Marcus was too young to articulate it fully, but he could sense when he was being singled out. Despite all this, Marcus found refuge at home. Lisa, perceptive as always, noticed the heaviness in his posture when he returned from school. She never pried, but always let him know she was there if he wanted to talk. They had a tradition of sharing their days over dinner, a ritual that allowed Marcus to open up when he needed to. One evening, Marcus hesitantly mentioned how Dylan had knocked his books out of his hands in the hallway. Lisa listened carefully, her hands still as she gripped her fork. "Marcus," she said softly, "you're stronger than you think. Sometimes, standing up for yourself doesn't mean fighting back the way they expect. It means showing them they can't shake who you are." Her words lingered in his mind, even as the weight of school life pressed on him. Marcus often wondered how to live up to her faith in him. At school, he would glance at Dylan, bracing himself for the next jab. While at home, he sketched late into the night, creating worlds where he could be free. For now, the battle was silent. The lines had been drawn, but Marcus wasn't sure how or when he would find the courage to step across them. Dylan Harper was the kind of kid who thrived on power. In 7th grade, power didn't come from grades or good behavior. It came from who could command attention, who could humiliate others and still come out grinning. Dylan had perfected this art. He was tall for his age, with a cocky swagger that made other kids laugh at his jokes, even when they weren't funny. But for Marcus, Dylan was anything but amusing. The first time Dylan targeted Marcus, it was subtle, a passing comment in the hallway. "Nice shoes," Dylan sneered, loud enough for others to hear. Marcus, glancing down at his scuffed sneakers, knew it wasn't a compliment. He said nothing, hoping it would end there. But silence, as Marcus would learn, only fueled Dylan's behavior. Soon, Dylan's taunts grew sharper. He began mocking Marcus's appearance, calling him brainiac in a tone that made intelligence sound like an insult. When Dylan found out that Marcus's mom worked as a nurse and that they lived in a modest home, the insult shifted. "Bet your mom's too busy to buy you real clothes," Dylan jeered one morning. The words cut deeper than Marcus let on, but he kept his head down and walked away. Avoiding Dylan became a daily strategy. Marcus memorized his schedule, taking alternate routes to his locker or lingering in the classroom until the hallways cleared. But no matter how much he tried to stay out of Dylan's path, it was only a matter of time before their worlds collided. One day in the school cafeteria, Marcus was carrying his lunch tray when Dylan called out to him. "Hey, Marcus, over here." Dylan's voice carried above the chatter, drawing attention. Marcus hesitated, knowing better than to engage. But before he could move, Dylan's foot shot out, tripping him. The tray clattered to the floor, scattering food everywhere. The cafeteria erupted in laughter, and Marcus felt a hot flush of humiliation rise to his cheeks. He scrambled to pick up the mess, his hands shaking as Dylan leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Careful, Marcus. Don't want to spill on those fancy shoes of yours." By the time Marcus returned to his seat, his appetite was gone. He stared at the table, willing the day to end. That night, Lisa noticed something was off. Marcus was unusually quiet, barely touching his dinner. "Rough day?" she asked gently. Marcus shrugged, not ready to talk about it yet. But the breaking point came when Dylan took things further. One afternoon, Dylan and a group of his friends cornered Marcus by the lockers. They shoved him against the metal door, rifling through his backpack while Marcus protested. When Marcus tried to grab it back, Dylan threw the bag across the hall, scattering its contents. Angry and embarrassed, Marcus decided to report the incident to his science teacher, Mr. Bradley, who was nearby when it happened. Mr. Bradley listened but dismissed it with a wave of his hand. "Boys will be boys," he said. "Just ignore him, Marcus. He'll get bored eventually." Marcus's chest tightened at the response. How could he ignore it when it happened every day? The teacher's indifference made him feel small, like his voice didn't matter. When Marcus told Lisa what had happened, she was furious. "That's unacceptable," she said, her voice steady but firm. "I'm going to speak to the school about this." The next day, Lisa met with the principal, laying out everything Marcus had told her. But the principal's response mirrored Mr. Bradley's. "We encourage students to work things out among themselves," she said with a tight smile. "If it continues, we can revisit the issue." Lisa left the office feeling deflated but not defeated. She hugged Marcus tightly that evening, reassuring him that they'd find a way to make things right. But for Marcus, the frustration lingered. It wasn't just Dylan's bullying that hurt. It was the sense that no one in a position of authority seemed to care enough to help. In his room that night, Marcus sat at his desk, a pencil in hand. He began sketching a scene that had been playing in his mind all day. A small boy standing up against a towering shadow. It was a world where the powerless could fight back and win, even if only on paper. Lisa didn't waste time after Marcus shared his experience with Dylan and the teacher's dismissive response. The next morning, she walked into the school office, her resolve evident in the determined set of her jaw. She requested a meeting with the principal and was soon seated in the office, facing Principal Carter, a middle-aged woman with a calm, polished demeanor. Lisa recounted everything Marcus had told her, the cafeteria incident, the confrontation by the lockers, and Mr. Bradley's refusal to take action. Principal Carter listened quietly, nodding occasionally, but offering little more than vague platitudes. "We take bullying very seriously," she said, her tone professional but distant. "However, These situations are often complicated. Boys this age tend to roughhouse. It's important not to jump to conclusions. Lisa's frustration bubbled to the surface. "This isn't roughhousing," she insisted. "Dylan is targeting my son. This is about more than just boys being boys." Principal Carter's smile tightened. "I understand your concerns, Ms. Reynolds, but we encourage students to resolve minor conflicts on their own. If things escalate, we'll step in. For now, let's monitor the situation." The meeting ended without any concrete action, leaving Lisa feeling dismissed. She drove home, replaying the conversation in her mind, wondering if she could have said something more persuasive. That evening, she sat with Marcus in their living room, her worry etched into her face. Marcus, meanwhile, had begun retreating into himself. He spent less time drawing and more time in his room with the door closed. At school, he avoided places where he might run into Dylan, skipping lunch in the cafeteria and steering clear of the main hallways. His teachers noticed his silence in class, but no one said anything. One night, Lisa knocked on Marcus's door and found him sitting on his bed, staring at a blank page in a sketch pad. She sat beside him, waiting for him to speak. After a long silence, Marcus finally looked up, his eyes glassy with unshed tears. "Why does he hate me?" he asked quietly. "I don't even know what I did wrong." Lisa's heart broke, hearing the pain in her son's voice. She pulled him into a hug, stroking his back gently. "You didn't do anything wrong, Marcus," she said firmly. "Some people hurt others because of their own insecurities. It's not your fault." Marcus pulled away slightly, wiping his eyes. I don't know how to make it stop." Lisa wanted to promise him that things would get better, but she also knew how complicated the situation was. Instead, she said, "We'll figure it out together. I'll always be here for you." The next day at school, things took an unexpected turn. Dylan cornered Marcus in the hallway, his usual smirk plastered across his face. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" Dylan sneered. Marcus stayed silent, trying to walk away, but Dylan stepped in front of him. "Meet me after school," Dylan challenged, his voice low enough that only Marcus could hear. "Let's see if you're as tough as you think you are." Marcus hesitated, his heart racing. He didn't want to fight, but the taunt in Dylan's voice made it clear that refusing wouldn't end the matter. "Fine," Marcus said quietly, his voice trembling but firm. The school day dragged on, each class a blur as Marcus's mind replayed the confrontation over and over. When the final bell rang, he gathered his things slowly, his stomach churning. Outside, the afternoon sun hung low in the sky as students milled around the parking lot. Dylan was waiting near the bike racks, a small crowd beginning to form around him. Marcus felt the weight of their eyes as he approached, each step heavier than the last. Lisa's words echoed in his mind. Asterisk, "You're stronger than you think." Asterisk, but as he reached the edge of the crowd, he wasn't sure he believed it. The scene froze there, the tension palpable, as Marcus squared his shoulders and faced Dylan. The crowd around the bike racks buzzed with anticipation as Marcus stood before Dylan, his fists clenched at his sides. Dylan's smug grin only deepened as he stepped closer, his voice loud enough to draw the attention of everyone nearby. "So, what's it gonna be, Marcus? You gonna fight? Or are you just gonna stand there like a coward?" Marcus's heart pounded in his chest, his body rigid with fear and frustration. He could feel the weight of the onlookers' stares, waiting for him to react. For a moment, he considered swinging back, letting the anger take over. But something in him resisted. He straightened his shoulders, looking Dylan square in the eye. "I'm not going to fight you," Marcus said, his voice trembling but steady. "You want to feel big by picking on me? Fine, but I'm not giving you the satisfaction." The crowd murmured, some kids looking impressed by Marcus's courage, while others whispered and laughed at his refusal to engage. Dylan's grin faltered for a brief second, replaced by a flicker of irritation, but he quickly recovered, turning to his audience. "See? Told you he's scared," Dylan sneered. "Can't even stand up for himself." The dismissal stung. But Marcus walked away, his head held high even as the crowd began to disperse. However, Dylan wasn't finished. The next day, rumors began to spread through the school. Dylan claimed that Marcus had cried and begged him not to fight, twisting the narrative to humiliate him further. By the end of the week, Marcus felt like he couldn't escape the whispers and mocking glances in the hallways. Kids who had once been neutral now avoided him, unwilling to risk being associated with someone labeled as weak. The emotional toll began to show in every part of Marcus's life. His grades, once solid, began to slip as his focus wavered. Homework assignments went unfinished, and he struggled to keep up with lessons in class. At home, he withdrew even further, spending hours alone in his room. Lisa noticed the changes immediately. She tried to engage him with his favorite meals, movie nights, and even new sketch pads, but Marcus's responses were short and distant. One evening, as she folded laundry in the living room, Marcus wandered in and sat silently on the couch. Lisa put down the laundry and turned to him. "Marcus, talk to me, please." For a long moment, Marcus stared at the floor, his hands gripping the edge of the couch. Then, his voice broke the silence, shaky and small. "Why am I not enough, Mom? No matter what I do, it's like I'm invisible or I'm a target." Lisa's heart ached at his words. She moved closer, wrapping her arms around him. "Oh, sweetheart, you are more than enough," she said firmly. "The way people treat you says more about them than it does about you. I know it's hard, but don't let them make you forget how incredible you are." Her words brought tears to Marcus's eyes, and for the first time in days, he let himself cry in her arms. Meanwhile, tensions in the community were brewing. The bullying at school had sparked whispers among parents, some of whom had heard about Dylan's behavior and the school's apparent lack of action. The issue came to a head at a heated PTA meeting, where Lisa decided to speak out. The room was packed, with parents divided into small groups, murmuring among themselves. When Lisa stood up, her voice was calm but passionate as she recounted Marcus's experiences. "This isn't just about one child," she said. "It's about the culture we're allowing in our schools. When kids are targeted because of who they are, and nothing is done, it sends a message that bullying is acceptable." Her words were met with mixed reactions. A few parents nodded in agreement, but others dismissed her concerns. "Kids will be kids," one father said dismissively. "You can't protect them from everything." Another parent chimed in. "It's not fair to single out Dylan. We don't even know the full story." Lisa's frustration boiled beneath the surface as the conversation spiraled. Each time she tried to steer it back to the broader issue, her voice was drowned out by louder, more dismissive arguments. The principal, present at the meeting, offered only vague assurances about reviewing policies, leaving Lisa feeling as though the meeting had accomplished nothing. When she returned home that night, Lisa sat quietly at the kitchen table, her head in her hands. Marcus peeked out from his room, noticing the heaviness in her posture. For the first time, he saw that the fight wasn't just his. It was theirs together. But as he watched her sit there, he wondered how much more they could endure before something had to change. As Marcus struggled to navigate the storm of bullying and isolation, a glimmer of hope appeared in the form of Mr. Garcia, his art teacher. Mr. Garcia was a soft-spoken man in his 40s, known for his unshakable patience and the colorful murals that adorned the walls of the art room. Unlike other teachers, Mr. Garcia had a way of noticing the quiet ones, the kids who slipped under the radar. One afternoon, as Marcus worked on a sketch during free period, Mr. Garcia wandered over and paused behind him. The drawing on the page was raw and intense, a small figure standing against a dark, looming shadow. "This is powerful, Marcus," Mr. Garcia said gently. Marcus stiffened, unsure how to respond, but Mr. Garcia's tone held no judgment. "What made you draw this?" Marcus hesitated before answering. "I don't know. Just how I've been feeling, I guess." Mr. Garcia nodded, pulling up a chair. "Art is one of the best ways to express what words can't. "You've got real talent, Marcus. I hope you keep at it." Those words stuck with Marcus. Over the following weeks, he spent more time in the art room, finding solace in the quiet and the freedom to pour his emotions onto the page. Mr. Garcia offered guidance without pushing, letting Marcus's creativity unfold naturally. Slowly, Marcus began to feel a sense of control, as if each stroke of his pencil was a step toward reclaiming his voice. Around this time, Marcus also found an unexpected ally in Emma, a bright, outspoken girl who had always been part of the periphery of his social circle. Emma was known for her quick wit and her refusal to tolerate injustice, traits that often made her stand out in a crowd. One day, she approached Marcus in the library, where he was sitting alone, sketching in his notebook. "Hey," she said, dropping into the seat across from him. Marcus looked up, startled. "Hi. I heard what Dylan's been saying about you," Emma said bluntly. Marcus tensed, bracing for more ridicule. But Emma surprised him. "I don't believe a word of it. Dylan's an idiot." Marcus blinked, unsure how to respond. "Thanks, I guess." Emma smiled. "You shouldn't let him get to you. People like him only win if you let them." Her confidence was infectious, and over time, Emma became a steady presence in Marcus's life. She sat with him at lunch, partnered with him in group projects, and even encouraged him to share his artwork with others. Her friendship brought moments of laughter and lightness, reminding Marcus that not everyone saw him through Dylan's distorted lens. Meanwhile, Lisa found herself grappling with the broader challenge of making her voice heard. During one of her shifts at the hospital, she confided in a co-worker, a seasoned nurse named Carol who had been active in local community initiatives. Carol listened intently as Lisa described the school's dismissive response to Marcus's struggles. When Lisa finished, Carol leaned forward, her expression firm. "You're not alone in this," she said. "There are other parents dealing with the same thing. You just need to find them." Carol introduced Lisa to a local community leader, Mrs. Taylor, who was known for organizing advocacy efforts. At their first meeting, Mrs. Taylor greeted Lisa warmly, listening with empathy as she recounted Marcus's experiences. "You have a powerful story, Lisa," Mrs. Taylor said, "and there's strength in numbers. If you're willing, I can help you reach out to other parents and share your story publicly. Together, we can push for real change." Lisa hesitated, unsure if she was ready to take such a big step. But Mrs. Taylor's confidence was reassuring. "I'll think about it," Lisa said finally, and Mrs. Taylor nodded, handing her a list of upcoming community events and resources. Over the following days, Lisa began to draft a letter to other parents, detailing her experiences and calling for collective action. Though she was nervous, the thought of giving Marcus, and kids like him, a safer, more supportive environment gave her the courage to move forward. As these relationships began to form, Marcus and Lisa found new strength in their support systems. Marcus's connection with Mr. Garcia and Emma reminded him that he wasn't alone, while Lisa's budding partnership with Mrs. Taylor gave her hope that change was possible. But beneath the surface, the challenges continued to simmer, and neither mother nor son knew how far they would have to go to truly overcome them. Marcus stood frozen in the art room, staring at the remnants of his ruined project. The vibrant colors he had carefully layered over weeks were now smeared into a chaotic mess. Torn paper and splatters of paint covered the desk, a clear act of deliberate sabotage. On the edge of the canvas, the words "loser" and "crybaby" were scrawled in black marker. He didn't need to ask who had done it. Dylan's mocking laughter had been echoing through the hallway just moments earlier, and Marcus knew this was no coincidence. His chest burned with anger, and for the first time, he felt something deeper than sadness or fear. He felt the urge to fight back. Grabbing his backpack, Marcus stormed out of the school, barely noticing the concerned looks from Mr. Garcia and Emma as they called after him. When he got home, he slammed his bag down and began rummaging through his drawers. His hands trembled as he grabbed an old baseball bat. Lisa came home from her shift to find Marcus sitting on the edge of his bed, gripping the bat tightly. his face a mixture of anger and despair. "Marcus," she said cautiously, stepping into the room. He looked up at her, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I'm done, Mom," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sick of him getting away with everything. I have to stop him." Lisa's heart ached at the sight of her son so defeated and enraged. She sat beside him, gently placing her hand over his. "Marcus, listen to me. I know how you feel. I really do." "No, you don't," Marcus snapped, pulling his hand away. "You don't know what it's like to be humiliated every single day and have no one care." Lisa took a deep breath, steadying herself. "You're right. I don't know exactly what you're going through, but when I was your age, I dealt with my own Dylan." Marcus frowned, surprised. "What do you mean?" Lisa leaned back, her gaze distant as she recalled her childhood. "There was a girl in my school, Tasha. She was relentless, always finding new ways to tear me down. One day, she ruined a project I'd spent weeks working on, just like what Dylan did to you. I was so angry, Marcus. I wanted to hurt her the way she hurt me." "What did you do?" he asked quietly. "I almost fought her," Lisa admitted. "But then my mom sat me down and told me something I've never forgotten. She said, 'Lisa, don't let someone else's darkness pull you into it. Be better than them, even when it's hard.'" Marcus stared at her, his grip on the bat loosening. "What happened to Tasha?" Lisa smiled faintly. "She didn't change overnight, but I stayed true to myself, and eventually she got bored of trying to bring me down. And you know what? Years later, she apologized. She told me she envied me for not letting her break me." For a long moment, Marcus was silent, her words sinking in. Finally, he set the bat down, his shoulders slumping. "I don't know if I can do that, Mom." "You're stronger than you think, Marcus," Lisa said, pulling him into a hug. "And you're not alone. We'll get through this together." The next day at school, Marcus was still reeling from the incident. He avoided the art room, unable to face the sight of his ruined project. But Emma, ever vigilant, noticed his absence and decided to investigate. When she saw the destruction, she immediately suspected Dylan. Emma had been quietly documenting some of Dylan's bullying on her phone, unsure if or when she might need it. That afternoon, she showed the footage to Marcus. In one clip, Dylan was seen cornering Marcus in the hallway, throwing his backpack to the ground while others laughed. In another, he mocked Marcus's artwork during class. "This has to stop," Emma said, her voice firm. Marcus hesitated, unsure if exposing Dylan was the right move. But Emma took matters into her own hands, posting the videos anonymously on social media with a caption calling out the bullying and the school's inaction. Within hours, the videos went viral, sparking outrage among parents, students, and even people outside the community. Comments flooded in, condemning Dylan's behavior and demanding accountability from the school. The twist came when Dylan's parents, humiliated by the public backlash, demanded a meeting with the school administration. The principal, who had previously dismissed Lisa's concerns, now scrambled to address the issue, knowing the reputation of the school was at stake. For Marcus, the sudden attention was overwhelming. He hadn't wanted things to escalate this way, but for the first time, he felt a shift in power. Dylan was no longer untouchable, and Marcus realized he didn't need to fight fire with fire to stand up for himself. The truth had done it for him. The video of Dylan's bullying spread like wildfire. Within hours, it had been shared across social media, drawing attention not just from local parents and students, but also from activists and educators in surrounding communities. The comments were filled with outrage, condemning Dylan's actions and the school's apparent failure to intervene. Some called for Dylan's expulsion, while others demanded systemic changes to address the culture of bullying and prejudice within the school. The next morning, the school was abuzz with whispers and stares. Teachers, caught off guard by the sudden publicity, scrambled to restore order. The principal, who had previously downplayed Lisa's concerns, called an emergency meeting with staff and promised to address the situation. For Marcus, walking through the halls felt surreal. The same students who had ignored or avoided him were now offering quiet smiles or words of support. Later that day, Lisa received an unexpected phone call from the principal, requesting a private meeting with her and Marcus. She was surprised to learn that Dylan's parents had also requested to attend. Although hesitant, Lisa agreed, hoping this might finally lead to a meaningful resolution. The meeting was tense from the start. Dylan's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, were visibly uncomfortable, their earlier defensiveness replaced by embarrassment. Dylan sat beside them, his usual bravado replaced by a sullen expression. "I want to start by saying we're sorry," Mrs. Thompson began, her voice trembling. "We had no idea things had gotten this bad." The video was hard to watch. Lisa nodded, her arms crossed. "It's not just about the video. This has been going on for months, and the school ignored it." Before the conversation could escalate further, a small voice interrupted. "Marcus?" Everyone turned to see a younger boy peeking around the corner of the doorway. It was Dylan's 8-year-old brother, Owen, who had come along with their parents. His wide eyes were filled with curiosity and concern. "Owen, this isn't the time," Mr. Thompson said, his tone sharp. But Owen stepped into the room anyway, clutching a small sketchbook. "I just wanted to say, I think your drawings are really cool." He held up the sketchbook, revealing a clumsy but heartfelt attempt to recreate one of Marcus's pieces that had been displayed during an art show. Marcus blinked, taken aback. You've seen my art." Owen nodded eagerly. "Yeah, Dylan showed me. He said you're really good at it." Dylan shifted uncomfortably in his seat, avoiding eye contact. Lisa leaned forward, her expression softening. "Owen, why don't you tell us more about why you're here?" Owen hesitated before speaking. "Sometimes Dylan gets mad. Not at you, but at other stuff. Like when Dad yells or when things aren't good at home." The room fell silent. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat, his face flushed. "Owen, that's enough." "No," Lisa interjected firmly. "Let him talk." Owen looked at Marcus with wide, honest eyes. "Dylan doesn't mean to be mean. He just doesn't know what else to do." Marcus exchanged a glance with Lisa, who gave him a small, encouraging nod. Taking a deep breath, Marcus turned to Dylan. "I don't know what's going on with you, and maybe it's not my place to ask, but I think there's a better way to handle this. For both of us." Everyone in the room looked at Marcus, surprised. He hesitated for a moment before continuing. "Instead of just punishing Dylan, what if we tried something different? Like restorative justice?" The principal frowned. "Restorative justice? It's when people sit down and talk about what happened and how to make things right," Marcus explained. "It's not about blame. It's about understanding and fixing things. Dylan can tell me why he's been doing what he's doing, and I can tell him how it's made me feel. And we figure out together how to move forward." Dylan's parents exchanged uncertain glances, and the principal looked skeptical. But Lisa's face was a mixture of pride and amazement. "That sounds like a great idea," she said, her voice steady. Dylan finally spoke, his voice quiet. "You'd really want to do that? After everything I've done?" Marcus nodded. "Yeah, because I don't want this to keep happening. To me or anyone else." For the first time, Dylan met Marcus's gaze, a flicker of something, perhaps regret, crossing his face. The principal agreed to facilitate the process, and plans were made for a restorative justice session involving Marcus, Dylan, and their families. As the meeting ended, Lisa squeezed Marcus's shoulder, her pride evident. "You're braver than I ever realized," she whispered. Marcus gave her a small smile. For the first time in months, he felt a sense of control, not just over his situation, but over the kind of person he wanted to be. The day of the restorative circle arrived, and tension hung in the air as everyone filed into the school library. A few chairs were arranged in a circle, with Marcus and Dylan sitting across from one another. To the side, Lisa sat with Mr. Garcia, while Dylan's parents lingered nervously near the door. The school principal facilitated the meeting, determined to address the issue in front of the small group of students and staff. Marcus's palms were sweaty, but he kept his expression steady. He had spent the past few days reflecting on what he wanted to say and how he wanted to approach Dylan. Though nervous, he had resolved to stay calm and focus on the bigger picture. The principal began by laying out the purpose of the circle. This is a space for honesty and understanding. Marcus, Dylan, we're here to listen to both of you and find a way forward. Marcus was invited to speak first. He looked directly at Dylan, his voice steady but firm. "What you've been doing hurt me," he began. "Not just because of the things you said or did, but because I didn't understand why. I thought I was doing something wrong, or maybe there was something about me that made it okay for you to treat me that way." Dylan shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes fixed on the floor. "But I realized it's not about me," Marcus continued. "It's about the way we've been taught to see each other, and I don't want to carry that kind of hurt around anymore. That's why I wanted to talk, not to blame you, but to figure out how we can stop this, for both of us." The room was silent as Dylan processed Marcus's words. When it was his turn to speak, he hesitated before looking up. "I don't know what to say," he mumbled. "I guess I was just angry at a lot of things, and you were an easy target." "What made me an easy target?" Marcus asked gently. Dylan's face reddened, and he fumbled for words. "I don't know. You're smart. People like you. And you don't let things get to you. I guess I wanted to see if I could change that." The honesty of his words surprised everyone. It wasn't a full apology, but it was a step. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Well, you did get to me, but not in the way you think. I had to work harder to remember who I am and what I'm worth. And I decided I'm not going to let anyone take that away from me. Not you or anyone else." He stood up and walked to a table at the side of the room. From his bag, he pulled out his art project, which he had spent hours restoring. Though the original design was altered, the new version was even more vibrant, with bold strokes and colors that reflected Marcus's determination. "This is what I've been working on," Marcus said, holding the piece up for everyone to see. "When you destroyed it, Dylan, I almost gave up. But then I realized I could make something even better. And that's what I'm going to keep doing. Turning what's broken into something stronger." The room was captivated. Even Dylan seemed taken aback by Marcus's calm strength and the beauty of his artwork. For the first time, he looked Marcus in the eye and muttered, "I'm sorry." Marcus nodded, accepting the apology but not dwelling on it. "Thank you. I hope this can be a start for both of us." As the circle concluded, Lisa spoke up. "This isn't just about Marcus and Dylan," she said, her voice clear and determined. "This is about a culture that allows this kind of thing to happen in the first place. We can't just stop here. We need to make real changes." Her words resonated with the group, and the principal promised to work on implementing anti-bullying programs and sensitivity training for staff and students. Inspired by the meeting, Lisa decided to take her advocacy a step further. She began organizing a community initiative, reaching out to other parents and local leaders to address bullying and prejudice. Over the weeks that followed, Lisa's efforts gained momentum, with parents joining her cause and pushing for accountability from the school board. She became a prominent voice in the community, inspiring others to take action. For Marcus, the restorative circle marked a turning point. He no longer felt powerless in the face of bullying. Instead, he discovered the strength of his voice and the impact of his actions, lessons that would stay with him for the rest of his life. As days turned into weeks following the restorative circle, Marcus and Lisa began to see signs of progress, but it wasn't enough. While Dylan's bullying had ceased and he seemed to be making genuine efforts to change, the broader issues at the school remained unaddressed. The principal, still unwilling to fully acknowledge the administration's failures, announced a series of minor policy changes, including an anonymous tip line for reporting bullying and a brief anti-bullying seminar. Lisa sat in the back of the crowded auditorium as the principal presented these measures during a school assembly. She clenched her fists, frustration bubbling under the surface. The proposed changes felt more like a public relations move than a real effort to fix the systemic problems. Later that evening, Lisa vented her frustrations to Mr. Garcia, who had become a trusted ally. "They think a couple of posters and a seminar will fix this," she said, pacing the room. "But nothing's going to change if they don't address the root of the problem." Mr. Garcia nodded. "You're right, but change doesn't come from the top down. It starts with the community." Inspired, Lisa decided to take matters into her own hands. She began organizing a grassroots effort to push for more comprehensive reforms, including sensitivity training for staff, a peer mentorship program, and better oversight of disciplinary actions. Marcus, now more confident and determined, offered to help. One afternoon, Marcus and his friends gathered at the community center, folding and distributing flyers for an upcoming forum Lisa had planned. The flyers read, "Asterisk join us. Let's build a safer, stronger school for everyone." Asterisk Marcus felt a surge of pride as he handed a stack to Emma, who smiled and gave him a thumbs up. The night of the forum arrived, and the school gymnasium was packed. Parents, students, teachers, and community leaders filled the seats, their faces a mix of anticipation and apprehension. At the front of the room, Lisa stood beside a small panel of speakers, including Mr. Garcia and a local advocate for educational equity. The forum began with opening remarks from Lisa, who recounted Marcus's experience with raw emotion. "What happened to my son isn't just about him," she said, her voice steady but passionate. "It's about every child who's ever felt powerless, every parent who's ever been dismissed, and every teacher who's ever felt unsupported. We have a responsibility to do better." As she spoke, the room fell silent, her words resonating deeply with many in attendance. But not everyone was on her side. A parent stood up, their tone defensive. "We can't just overhaul everything because of one incident. Kids will be kids, and bullying has always been a part of growing up." Another parent quickly countered, "That's exactly the problem. Just because something's always happened doesn't mean it's right." The room erupted into heated debates, voices overlapping as tensions rose. Some argued that the proposed changes were too extreme, while others demanded even more sweeping reforms. The principal, seated at the back, shifted uncomfortably, clearly out of his depth. Marcus watched from the sidelines, his heart pounding. He glanced at Lisa, who met his gaze and gave him an encouraging nod. Taking a deep breath, he stood up and walked to the microphone. "I know I'm just a kid," he began, his voice wavering slightly. "But I'm the one who's lived this. And I'm not the only one. I know what it feels like to be invisible, to feel like no one cares. And I also know what it feels like to have people stand up for you. That's what this is about. Not blaming anyone, but making sure no one else has to go through this alone." His words silenced the room, the raw emotion in his voice cutting through the chaos. Even those who had been resistant seemed moved. As Marcus stepped back, the moderator announced a break for the audience to gather their thoughts and prepare for the next segment of the forum. The room buzzed with quiet conversations, the energy tense but charged with possibility. From the sidelines, Emma whispered to Marcus, "That was amazing. You really got through to them." Marcus managed a small smile, but his mind was racing. Despite the momentum they had built, he knew the outcome of the forum was far from certain. The next few hours would determine whether the community could come together to demand real change, or if everything they had fought for would be dismissed. The screen fades to black, leaving the audience hanging in suspense, wondering if Lisa and Marcus's efforts will be enough to spark the transformation their school so desperately needs. The gymnasium was electric with anticipation as the forum resumed after the break. All eyes turned to Marcus as he approached the microphone again, his steps measured, his face calm but determined. The audience had already heard his heartfelt words earlier, but now, standing at the podium, he prepared to deliver the message that had been building inside him for weeks. "I've thought a lot about what I wanted to say tonight," Marcus began, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "When everything started, I just wanted it to stop. I thought if I could avoid the problem, It might go away. But I've realized something important. Change doesn't happen by staying silent. He paused, scanning the room. He saw Lisa, her eyes shining with pride, and Mr. Garcia giving him a small, encouraging nod. Emma smiled from her seat, while Dylan sat beside his parents, his expression unreadable. I know a lot of you think this is just about me and Dylan, Marcus continued, but it's bigger than that. It's about how we treat each other, what we teach each other about kindness, respect, and understanding. If we don't work together to change things, this will keep happening. Not just to me, but to someone else, maybe someone who won't have the support I've had. The crowd was silent, captivated by Marcus's words. His voice wavered slightly as he added, I don't want anyone else to feel as invisible as I did. And I don't think Dylan wants to feel the way he does either. We can do better. For everyone. The gym erupted in applause, the sound echoing off the walls. Even those who had been skeptical earlier seemed moved, clapping along. The principal, seated near the back, stood and walked to the stage, raising a hand for silence. When the applause quieted, he addressed the crowd. Marcus, thank you for sharing your story. You've shown incredible courage and wisdom beyond your years. I'll admit, I didn't handle things the way I should have. And for that, I'm sorry to you, to your family, and everyone here who's been affected by similar experiences. Turning to the audience, he added, This forum has made it clear that we need to do more, and we will. Starting immediately, we'll implement comprehensive anti-bullying measures, sensitivity training for staff, and a peer support system. And I welcome any of you to be part of shaping these changes. The crowd erupted into applause again, this time louder and more sustained. Lisa leaned back in her seat, a tear rolling down her cheek as she realized that her and Marcus's voices had finally been heard. Dylan hesitated for a moment before standing up and walking to the stage. He stopped in front of Marcus, his face flushed. I've got something to say, he muttered, gripping the microphone tightly. I'm sorry, Marcus, for everything. I know I hurt you, and I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know I'll do better. Marcus studied Dylan for a moment, then extended a hand. The crowd held its breath as Dylan hesitated, then shook it firmly. The room erupted in cheers, the gesture symbolizing a tentative truce and the first step toward reconciliation. In the days that followed, the changes began to take shape. Lisa joined a committee of parents and teachers to oversee the new policies, while Marcus became a student representative, offering a voice for his peers. Dylan began participating in the peer support program, slowly earning back the trust of those around him. As a final gesture, the school arranged for Marcus's artwork to be displayed in the main hallway. The vibrant piece, restored and enhanced after Dylan's vandalism, now bore the title Asterisk Stronger Together. Asterisk. On the day it was unveiled, students, teachers, and parents gathered around to admire it. Mr. Garcia, standing beside Marcus, said, This is more than just art, Marcus. It's a symbol of hope and what we can achieve when we refuse to give up. Marcus smiled, his confidence shining through. It's a reminder, he said, that no matter how broken things might seem, we can always rebuild and make them better. The story ended with Marcus and Lisa walking home together, the sun setting behind them. Though the journey had been long and challenging, they knew this was only the beginning. Together, they had proven that change was possible, and that even the smallest voices could make a big difference. In the aftermath of the forum and the changes implemented at the school, life gradually settled into a new rhythm for Marcus and Lisa. But the events of the past few months had left a profound impact on both of them, reshaping their perspectives and strengthening their resolve. As Marcus walked through the school hallways, he noticed a shift in the atmosphere. Students who had once ignored him now greeted him with nods or smiles. Dylan, though still reserved, had begun making amends, joining school activities, and even assisting Marcus with a peer mentorship initiative. Marcus no longer felt invisible. Instead, he felt seen, respected, and empowered. For Marcus, the greatest lesson had been learning to stand up for himself. not with fists or harsh words, but with integrity and resolve. It's not about winning or losing, he explained to Emma one afternoon as they worked on another art project. It's about showing people who you really are and refusing to let them define you. His growth inspired others, including classmates who had previously stayed silent during moments of injustice. Slowly, Marcus became a role model, not just for his peers but for the entire school community. Lisa, too, found herself reflecting on the journey they had endured. Sitting in her kitchen one evening, she looked at a photo of Marcus from his elementary school days. The shy, uncertain boy in the picture seemed like a distant memory. "You've grown so much," she said, smiling at Marcus across the table. "You've taught me so much, too." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked, puzzled. Lisa set the photo down. "I used to think that staying quiet was the best way to avoid conflict, to protect you. But I've learned that speaking out, even when it's hard, is the only way to create real change. You showed me that, Marcus. You showed all of us." Her words hung in the air, and Marcus felt a swell of pride. "You've always been my voice when I couldn't find mine," he said. "Now I'm learning to use it because of you." The story also highlighted the power of community support. Without allies like Mr. Garcia, Emma, and the parents who rallied behind them, the changes at the school might never have happened. The process reminded everyone involved of the importance of collective action and how a united effort could amplify even the smallest voices. The restored artwork displayed in the school became a beacon of hope. Titled "Stronger Together," it depicted hands of different colors and sizes holding one another, surrounded by vibrant patterns symbolizing unity and resilience. It wasn't just a reflection of Marcus's journey. It was a testament to what could be achieved when people chose kindness and understanding over prejudice and division. Lisa often found herself drawn to the piece, pausing to admire it during her visits to the school. It reminded her that even when the odds seemed stacked against them, persistence and faith in others could lead to meaningful change. Every brushstroke tells a story, she thought, and together, they create something beautiful. The school's transformation didn't end with policy changes. It sparked an ongoing dialogue among students, staff, and parents about equity, empathy, and the need for accountability. Lisa became a leading voice in these discussions, spearheading initiatives that extended beyond the school and into the broader community. Her advocacy inspired others to share their own stories and take action against injustices they had faced. Reflecting on the journey, Lisa realized the greatest lesson of all. True strength lay in vulnerability and the courage to speak up, even when the outcome was uncertain. "Sometimes," she said during a PTA meeting, "you have to be the first to stand, to speak, to act. Not because you're fearless, but because you know that fear is no excuse to stay silent." For Marcus, the lesson was equally profound. "What we do matters," he said during a school assembly. "Every choice, every action, it all adds up. We all have the power to make a difference. It just takes believing in ourselves and each other." As the days turned into months, the echoes of their story continued to resonate, not just within their school, but across the community. Marcus and Lisa's journey became a reminder that even in the face of adversity, hope, resilience, and kindness could pave the way for a brighter future. And for Marcus, his mother, and all those who stood beside them, this was just the beginning of a legacy they hoped would inspire generations to come. The auditorium buzzed with excitement as the results of the art contest were announced. Marcus sat near the edge of his seat, his hands clenched tightly on his lap. Lisa, sitting beside him, whispered words of encouragement, her hand resting on his shoulder. "And the winner is Marcus Williams for his piece, Stronger Together," the announcer declared. The room erupted into applause, and Marcus froze for a moment, disbelief washing over him before a broad smile broke across his face. Lisa hugged him tightly, her pride evident in the tears streaming down her cheeks. Walking up to the stage, Marcus felt a wave of emotion as he accepted his award. Standing at the podium, he gazed out at the audience, his peers, teachers, and community members, all watching him with admiration and respect. "Thank you," Marcus began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "This piece isn't just my story. It's our story, a story of learning to see each other, to listen and to grow. I couldn't have done this without the support of my mom, my friends, and everyone who believed in me. This is for all of us." The applause that followed was deafening, and as Marcus stepped off the stage, he was greeted by Emma, Mr. Garcia, and even Dylan, who offered him a quiet congratulations. Dylan's transformation had been gradual but noticeable. Encouraged by his parents in the restorative circle process, he had started attending counseling sessions and making small but sincere efforts to change. While he and Marcus weren't friends, there was a newfound respect between them, an unspoken understanding that healing was a process, not a destination. The school, too, underwent a transformation. Inspired by Lisa's persistence and Marcus's bravery, they implemented new anti-bullying initiatives, including peer mentorship programs and cultural sensitivity workshops. The initiatives brought students, teachers, and parents together in ways that had never been seen before. The once divided community began to bond over shared goals, proving that change was possible when everyone worked together. At home that evening, Marcus and Lisa celebrated his victory with a quiet dinner, the award sitting prominently on the kitchen table. They laughed and reminisced about how far they had come, the warmth of their small home amplified by their sense of accomplishment. "I'm so proud of you," Lisa said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've taught me what it means to be brave, Marcus." "You taught me, Mom," Marcus replied, his eyes shining. "You never gave up on me, even when things were tough. We did this together." The camera pans to Marcus's artwork, now framed and hanging on the living room wall. The vibrant depiction of unity, hands of all colors and sizes interwoven against a backdrop of light, serves as a powerful symbol of hope and resilience. As the image lingers, the voices of Marcus and Lisa fade into the background, replaced by soft music. The final shot zooms out to show the small, modest home glowing warmly in the night, a beacon of light and love in a world that had for a moment seemed so dark. This was not just the end of their story, but the beginning of something greater. A reminder to all that even in the face of adversity, courage, compassion, and unity could transform lives and build bridges where none existed before.